You're about to watch a clip from the Videomaker podcast. To watch or listen to the full episode, click the link in the description. So, we talked about proxies, and we talked about this idea of transcoding and then, keeping the originals or what have you. But I think that really, for most people, what it's going to come down to is they're going to be in a situation where they have their footage and, hopefully they can just take their footage straight off their camera and edit it. Which, great, no transcoding for you. You're lucky. But in other cases, you need to transcode all your footage so you can edit it, and you edit your project, you finish it, you put it on YouTube or whatever you're doing with it, and that's the end of the project. Like I would classify, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, most of Videomaker's work is like this. We're not making big Hollywood films. We're not making films of any kind, frankly. No. We're making instructional videos and these podcasts, I guess, right? And so having it be the absolute highest bit depth, highest bit rate, video file is not super important. In other cases, it is, and you do need to, use a proxy just so that you can edit with any kind of efficiency without having your computer choke up in the middle of it. And I think that, let's see, one of you mentioned that you might not want to color grade your proxies. I don't know. I actually think that in a lot of cases you might. So, just to get an idea here. So this is really the topic here is the workflow and the sort of order of operations of when things happen.
Yeah.
So typically you would bring all your files in, you would edit it. You would go through a couple rounds of editing through the rough cut and the final cut before you come to a phase called picture lock, which basically says no more editing. We're just going to do the finishing now. We're going to go back and fix all the color, and you're going to add graphics or what have you at that point. So at that point, someone's going to jump in and work on the color. And you might be tempted to go back and say, okay, well, let's swap these proxies out for the originals here. But I would argue in a lot of cases you don't need to do that, at least if we're talking about, like for like bit depth. So if you have your proxies are 8-bit and your originals are 8-bit, this is what I'm talking about, or 10-bit versus 10-bit. In that, a lot of times you just need to take the proxies from 4K or 6K down to 1080, and everything else is fine. And you can achieve quite a bit of efficiency going from 4K to 1080. Like we're talking about a 4x reduction in the number of pixels on a screen at a time, while still being able to do color work on it. Like I said, assuming that they're the same bit depth.
Totally. And I mean, I think that it's only those that are going to do something. Well, I think it's when you're having to transcode, say, a 12-bit or something else like that. If you have to, most of the time, you're losing resolution. You also might be compressing it some. I think it really depends on the process and that you're going through. And
how much you have to get it down to size or whatever. What can your computer support? If it's a 480, whatever, pixelated placeholder, it's not going to be
if you're trying to edit
accurate.
your ARRI 4444 footage on your MacBook Air, you're gonna have to do some serious, compression.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically is your transcoding or your proxy. I kind of feel like you're either moving on from your RAW to a new, or you're going to go back to your RAW. And by RAW, I just mean source footage, I guess, in this case. But that most of the time, if you're dealing with something really big, you'll go back for it just for the final output. So you might grade on the footage because it's going to react the same if it's the same bit depth. But it's if you're editing some 8-bit 720 proxies of 12-bit 6K footage.
Yeah, that's not
that's not going to work. You're going to do a grade and it's going to not do anything to it. Or it'll just not be what you intended.
Right. You're not going to get an accurate preview.
Yeah, but you could do color grading at the transcode phase too. So you could go and grade all of your stuff, transcode it to, and so now it looks the way you did, or get it, if you're doing trying to retain dynamic range, get it within the parameters you want, and now you can just move on instead of the idea of proxies.
That's a good thing to do when you're talking about footage that's 12-bit footage and you're working on an 8-bit screen, you might do an initial color correction just to bring everything within that 8-bit range so you could see it all before you start editing.
I mean, it might be the idea of even just adding a Rec 709 LUT to your footage, and so that you just have it within this normal range, and you have you were able to capture more dynamic range, but there's still the data there.